Hey everybody, welcome to Culinary Characters Unlocked. I'm David Page. On this episode, the 2025 James Beard Award winner for Best Chef in Texas. He says the menu at his Belly of the Beast restaurant in Spring, Texas, outside Houston, reflects his experiences as a first-generation Mexican-American. But he says he isn't running a Mexican restaurant. He'll explain. Here's Thomas Bille. Chef, how are you? Thanks for being here.
Well, David, thanks for having me.
Well, first of all, congratulations on the James Beard Award, Best Chef in all of Texas, for what you're doing in a little restaurant, in a strip mall, in a Houston suburb, where you promise a dining experience, I'm going to read this and get it right, through the lens of a first-generation Mexican-American. How you doing that?
How am I doing that? First, thank you. So what does that mean? As a first generation Mexican American, you basically grow up with two cultures, right? So at home, we're very much Mexican. We got Mexican traditions, values, customs, language, right? We're speaking Spanish at home. Once we step out that door, we're American, right? We're experiencing the American experience. And to me, that means, especially growing up in Los Angeles, is, a melting pot of cultures. I was able to grow up around a lot of cultures on my block, on my street. I had a Korean neighbor, I had Vietnamese neighbors, Filipino neighbors, South American neighbors, Chinese and Japanese. It's a lot of cultures. The United Nations on the street. Those households had children my age or a little bit older, a little bit younger, and we all played on the street. I was able to eat their food and taste it at a very young age. That made a huge imprint on me. And my father being a chef, he would bring home like lobster and filet mignon. And so I got to smell, see, and taste all these different cuisines at a very young age. So when I started cooking professionally and venturing out on my own and being able to make my own cuisine, all that stayed with me, right? Like, so there's days, permitting the weather, I'll make clam chowder, I'll make a curry. Then we have like very traditional things like a mole, but like my version of mole. You know, we have a corn agnolotti pasta right now for the summer while corn is good. And it tastes like street corn, but it's in pasta form. That's what I'm trying to bring, like these global flavors with the technique I've learned through my career, but also using Mexican ingredients, Mexican techniques too. And just kind of like explaining like my story, my background, and just very personal food that I like to eat and I like to cook for people.
In your James Beard speech, well, do you remember the first thing you said when you got up on stage?
Oh, yeah. Absolutely.
Let me quote it. You got there, you looked at the audience, and the first thing you said was, "What the fuck?" I guess this was you really weren't expecting to win?
I woke up that morning and I felt very strongly that I was going to win, to be honest with you.
Did you?
For some strange reason, I woke up and I told my wife, I said, hey, I received the message like in my dream. And it said, be ready for what's to come. And I told her, I think I'm going to win this tonight. This is exactly what I told her. And she's like, really? I said, yeah, I'm going to win this shit tonight. We went about our day. We went and had tacos in Pilsen at Carnitas de Uruapan. And we ate them at the local park right down the street. We chilled and then we got to the ceremony. And, as Naisha is reading the names, I honestly, the reason I said what the fuck is because I thought she was still reading the nominees when she said the winner. I looked at Liz, my wife. She was like, you won. And I was like, whoa. So I got up there and I honestly was the underdog, basically because Emmanuel from Tatemo, it was his third time to Chicago as a finalist. If I was a betting man, most people would have bet on him, right?
Which candidate was that?
Emmanuel Chavez from Houston as well. And he owns a restaurant called Tatemo. They have a Michelin star. So, when I went out there, I was like, wow, damn, it was a great feeling.
You used the opportunity to talk about the immigration situation in the United States.
Yeah.
As a first-generation Mexican-American in an industry that relies heavily on immigrant labor, documented or not.
Correct.
How worried are you about what's going on? Not to make this terribly political, but it was a key part of your speech, so I thought, we should go there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I went up there, I did have a speech prepared, but it was in my shorthand and it was talking points, right? And I was like, okay, I'm not going to be able to read my shorthand right now. So I spoke from the heart. I tried not to get too political or anything, but it is my background. I am a child of immigrants. My parents are naturalized citizens now, but they, like many others, come to this country with nothing, and they make something of themselves. They buy homes and they work and they raise their children as best as they can, and they get them through school. So it is extremely important for me to share my story, and as many other immigrants should be sharing their story, right, of success. Especially when I wake up in the morning, and I try not to get on social media or anything, because I'm from Los Angeles, right? So I was born and raised there. I moved to Houston, Texas, to Spring, Texas 7 years ago, close to 7 years ago. So my timeline is filled with my friends and family from Los Angeles, right? So all I'm seeing is what's happening over there. And I wake up and I see this and I feel exhausted. I feel detriment. I feel embarrassed right now, because fine, you want to go after the criminals. You want to go after the people that are coming over here to do something malicious to this country, right? That's what we should be doing. But you're literally targeting people that look like me without due process. And we're seeing this government deteriorate in front of our eyes and fold into fascism. 100 years ago, this was happening in Germany.
Do you think you can use, well, obviously you did at the James Beard Awards, your prominence as a strong voice about this?
I'm going to use my voice as well as I can. I can't stay quiet to what's happening. I live in a ruby red state. I live in a ruby red neighborhood. Will there be backlash? Probably. But for me to show that what is happening is inhumane is just the most humane thing I could do. My friend called me, a high school friend, to congratulate me, and he lives in Vegas. And he just told me, he goes, my girlfriend's uncle was taken away and I don't know where he's at. Wow. I'm reading stories of actual American citizens being taken just because of racial profiling. It's heartbreaking.
As you said, you grew up in an extremely racially, ethnically diverse area in Los Angeles.
I did. Yeah.
As a first-generation Mexican-American, what was childhood like?
It was great. In my head, I never dealt with racism or anything. I mean, look, I grew up in Los Angeles in the 80s and 90s, right? And it was the gangbang capital of the world. It was a very violent era, and I didn't live in the best neighborhood. I lived on a nice street, and you walk across the street, and it was I always compare it to an episode I saw on Married with Children a long time ago, where they go back to London and there was like Lower Uncton and Upper Uncton, right? And like Lower Uncton was like covered in gray clouds and stuff like that. And that's kind of what it felt like. My street was really nice and birds are chirping, and then you walk across the street and you're hearing gunshots, and there's like 20 gang members chilling on the corner, graffiti everywhere. In that aspect, I never felt any type of like racism or, because honestly, at that time, the only white person I ever knew was my grandfather. He was the only like Caucasian individual in my life up until like I was working in the industry. Up until that, I never really thought about race, It's just living my life and honestly just trying to survive, man. It was a hard time growing up, as far as staying alive and getting past 18 years old. I lost a lot of friends from the moment I was 14. Every summer I lost one or two friends up until like age 24, maybe. It's heartbreaking, and it leaves a mark on you, which is one of the biggest reasons why I moved from California. Not because of the violence or anything, but just trying to create an environment for my children where they don't have to grow up with a swivel on their head.
And we'll be right back. Let's talk about cooking.
Yeah.
Your culinary influences growing up were in the home?
My dad and my mom. My mom is a very great cook. She'd work her 9 to 5, come home and still feed us. My dad, he's just chef by trade. So we ate some good stuff,
Okay, not everybody wants to do what dad does. Did you find yourself drawn to this at an early age?
No, I didn't start cooking professionally till I was around 27.
How'd that happen? Why'd that happen?
You come to a point in life, I came to a point in life where I was a single father at the time. I had a 6-year-old daughter.
And what were you doing for a living?
I was an assistant manager for a wholesale toner company. We worked at a warehouse. I was not in the culinary world, but I still cooked at home, and I've always like cooked for myself, even growing up, which is how I learned how to cook because I was a latchkey kid. I'd cook myself meals and not just like warming up soups or anything, but like I used to invite my friends over and be like, you guys want some tri-tip sandwiches? And they'd be like, what the heck is tri-tip, man? I'm like, oh yeah, we got some au jus with it and everything. Their minds would be blown.
How old were you at this point?
I was probably like 10, 11, 12. I was in middle school.
By the way, for East Coast or Midwesterners, tri-tip is a tremendously wonderful cut of beef that somehow you only find in California.
Yeah, you should see. I buy it here because it's always on sale. Nobody buys it. So,
Nobody wants it, right?
yeah.
Okay, so you look up one day, you say, I'm tired of working in the warehouse. Why don't I go to cooking school? How'd that happen?
I was going to this gym, and on the bottom floor of the gym, there was a culinary school, a Le Cordon Bleu subsidiary called Kitchen Academy. So it was a fast track culinary school. It was about 8 months, all hands on. You didn't have to do any studying or anything. Let me tell you the backstory. One day I was eating at a restaurant. It was a 1-star Michelin restaurant in downtown, and I got a plate of fish, Lou de mer, before it was called branzino, and it was actually wild caught. So it was like thick fillets, beautifully golden brown skin. I'm eating this and I say to myself, I think I could make this. And then another dish came and I was like, oh, I could totally make this. I don't know what sparked in me. So then that week I'm going to the gym. I see the thing and I was like, hey, you know what? Before I go up there, I'm going to check this out, right? So I go in the door. They're like, hey, if you want to come back this weekend, we're having an open house and you're welcome to enroll then. So I was like, okay, cool. I go, I enroll, and I loved it. From the moment you walk in, you were cooking. You were making stock. And I was making things I already knew how to do. But now, and the reason I wanted to go to culinary school is one, I was like, okay, let's dive into this career. I'm good at it, but I want to give myself a boost. I don't want to go in as a 26-year-old to a restaurant and they're like, hey, concasse these tomatoes, and I'm gonna be like, what? So I went in there to learn this kind of like terminology and understandings of things, right? Then I did very well. I graduated with highest honors and all that stuff. But in the meantime, I was already working. As soon as I started, I got a job.
A high-end place? What kind of place?
No, it was this place called Food Court LA, and it was a tongue-in-cheek restaurant. It was on Beverly Boulevard, on the restaurant row right there, and it was next to a 1-star Michelin called Ortolan. At the time, Christophe M. was the chef there. Beautiful restaurant. He was offering a 5-course tasting menu for $65, and each table had its own chandelier. It was a beautiful dining room.
You're next door. Are you cooking next door?
I'm next door making cheeseburger spring rolls and like skirt steak with like potatoes. And it was a very tongue-in-cheek restaurant where I was making Korean tacos before Korean tacos were a thing.
And you were making them. You're on the line.
Yeah, because, this is what happened. I'm working and the chef there one day turns to me and he goes, hey, you want my job? And I'm like, no, I'm in culinary school. I don't want your job. He's like, you're pretty good, man. I was like, dude, this is my first kitchen job. He's like, I want to give you my job. He kept like insisting. And I was like, you just want to quit, dude.
You were cooking. He was just the boss, right?
Yeah, I was just a cook, but I've already had like skills of managing, right? Because I was an assistant manager, So the guy goes, he's like, I can't believe this is your first job. Because I really took a liking to it and I pushed myself very hard, but I lacked so much skill and knowledge of the kitchen. So the guy quits and he tells the owners to hire me as the chef. The owners come to me and they're like, hey, what did you do to the chef? Like, I punked them into giving me his job. And I was like, dude, I don't want this job. I'm still in culinary school, man. And they're like, well, we see that you're good and I think you'd be a good fit and it's a bump in pay. And I was like, okay, I'll do it. So I'm placing orders and doing all this stuff, trying to run specials. One day I'm outside and I'm like scrubbing the floor mats and the chef next door comes out and he's smoking a cigarette. We start chatting and he goes, so what do you do here? I was like, I'm actually the chef here. He goes, why the fuck you cleaning the mats? And I said, because it's got to get done. He goes, why don't you come by and see what we're doing over here? So I went over there and I stodged for a few days and stuff.
At the Michelin 1-star?
At the Ortolan place, right? I went there for a couple of days. He was very militant.
Militant? What do you mean?
Like, he was throwing plates at people and stuff like that.
Oh, the brigade system. Right. Okay.
I was a hothead, younger than I was like, man, if this guy throws something at me, I'm going to throw something back. And it's not going to be good for him. I was like, all right, let me get out of this environment. I went on to work for an airline catering company. I became the sous chef there.
I interviewed Suzette Gresham, the 2-star Michelin chef from San Francisco, who told me she got her start in airline catering, which surprised me. Now that they were catering, wide body, long haul, first class kind of stuff.
That's exactly what I was doing. I was in charge of the Qantas airline account, first in business class. We were dealing with some beautiful product. Nothing was frozen, man. It would all come in like these beautiful loins of like yellowfin tuna. You name it. It was the best quality stuff. And I did that for about 2 years. It was a lot of work, man. It was a lot of work, but it taught me a lot, right? It taught me how to organize myself, how to lead a team, and how to cook in bulk and make it flavorful. It was a daunting task. We started that account is when they created the Airbuses and all that stuff. And I worked literally 42 days straight, all doubles. It was rough, man. I was like, man, I don't know. Like, this is crazy. My second to last shift before I actually got a day off, I worked a 23.5-hour shift. And the only reason it wasn't 24-hour shift because I was so tired that I went to blanch some vegetables. And the guy next to me goes, "Chef, are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, why?" He goes, "Your hands just went in the water." And I looked at my hands and I'm like, "Oh, I guess I did." And I went and I washed my hands with cold water and I said, "I'm going home." And I literally left. I slept in my car, woke up and went back to work.
You ended up working at a number of places in LA, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So, a lot of little stints here and there.
I've read that the inspiration for Belly of the Beast happened when you were either sous chef or chef de cuisine at the big Marriott downtown.
It's 2 hotels. It's the JW Marriott and the Ritz-Carlton, and it's 2 hotels in one. 1,000 rooms. When I went to the restaurant, I became the chef de cuisine there. We were across the street from which was called Staples Center back then, right? You'd have like the Lakers in the playoffs, and then we'd have like concerts and stuff. Very busy services, like 700 covers in 3 hours, man. It's just kind of like fire everything. And I'm over here like expoing on the window and cooks are just passing me pans and I'm over here plating things on plates and trying to put it up in the window. We had a humongous pass. One day I was like, "We're in the belly of the beast now." All the cooks were like, "Yeah, chef." I was like, damn, that's a good name for a restaurant. I'm going to keep that.
Back in a moment.
Belly of the Beast was going to be a food truck in Los Angeles. I was going to do it with a former chef that I used to work with. It fell through. I was like, okay, we didn't have the right start, but that was like the idea. And then after that, I moved to Odium.
Odium?
It was a very highly acclaimed restaurant. I really cut my teeth there. I told my wife, wherever I go after this, I need to open my own restaurant, and it's going to be called Belly of the Beast.
Did she think that was a good idea?
She knew I always wanted to have my own place. She did her undergrad here in Houston at U of H, and she actually lived close to the area where we live now. So when it came time to decide to move, I was actually the one who I was like, why don't we move to Texas?
Why did you want to move?
At that point, I had 3 kids. It was getting increasingly more expensive, obviously, with 3 children now.
Yeah, they like to eat and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Diapers are expensive, and my 2 young ones, they're born 2 years of each other. So it was difficult, I did a lot of work. All I did was work. One day, my wife, she goes, why don't we test the market and see if we could sell the house? Because we bought a house during the recession. I was like, oh, all right, whatever, And it literally sold on the first showing. So we came to visit my sister-in-law who had moved actually to Spring. I walk in their house and I'm like, what the heck? How much you pay for this house, And they're like, oh, we paid like $280 for it. And we're talking about like a 3,000 square foot home, like big lot, they got like a theater room. I'm like, oh.
So you decide to move to Spring, Texas.
Ultimately, honestly, like when we moved here, I was going to put my career on the back burner for a little bit. I was going to go be like a hotel chef or something. I landed at a restaurant because you need a restaurant when you get a mortgage. I mean, you need a job to get your mortgage, so.
Or a restaurant, either one, yeah.
Yeah, so I worked at a restaurant called Sochi from Hugo Ortega. I worked there for like 3 months, and I was like, I'm ready to find a space. So I found one in Old Town Spring. It was a little house that I converted with the help of my brother. We opened 5 weeks before the pandemic.
Timing's everything.
We did well, and we opened as a lunch restaurant. The pandemic hit and it was like, okay, what do we do? Because the first iteration of Belly of the Beast was similar to what we're doing here right now, right? Not as intricate or as upscale, but it was very chef driven and it was meant for the menu to change very often. So I pivoted and I said, okay, why don't we become a taqueria? And I was selling like all these family packs and we're selling tacos and stuff like that. And I got really good press. People were taking notice. I signed a 2-year lease there. When the second year was coming up, the infrastructure wasn't a good fit for us anymore. And we just outgrew the space. So I made the decision, I'm not going to renew the lease. I'm going to take a break. Let's find something more suitable and more commercial for our needs, right? When that happened, I was introduced to somebody that wanted to open a new concept at the space he had already. I gave him a stipulation. I said, look, I could only do this for a year because I need to get back to what I was already doing. I went in there as the executive chef. We opened a restaurant called Chivo's.
And what kind of food were you doing there?
Mexican-ish food, kind of like what I do already, but they wanted more of a Mexican flair than anything, right? We got good write-ups and stuff like that. And I did that for a year. Once the year came up, I was like, hey, man, we're doing well, but it's time for me to do my own thing again. So I left and I started doing pop-ups like right away for a whole year.
Well, I read that you said you didn't expect any bank to give you money to open a new iteration of Belly of the Beast.
We asked and we tried and everything. And it's always like, you haven't been in business long enough or too high of liability or whatever their excuse is to like not give me money. So in the time that I was working at Chivo's, I was getting a very nice paycheck. And my wife was working her national director job for a nonprofit organization. We were able to pay off some debt that we had. Our credit cards were cleared. So now I'm like, okay, let's do pop-ups. There was a little bar that reached out to me. It's called Heights & Co. And they're like, hey, we're doing this dinner series kind of thing. We'd like for you to come. They had a marketing team. So they were able to like spread the name out and okay, Thomas of Belly of the Beast will be here. And we like sold out really quick, the tickets and stuff like that. Now after that, we were like doing other events and we were selling out like our events and stuff like that. 30, 40 people, nothing crazy. And then I found this space here at the restaurant. We found this in May 2023 and we started building it out.
In a strip mall.
In a strip mall, yes.
I took a look on Google Earth. You're 2 down from the nail salon.
Correct. Yeah. Nail salon, massage place, and like a sushi Pan-Asian restaurant.
So you find the place, you've put together financing.
No, actually, we just put everything on our credit cards, man.
That's financing, yeah.
Whatever little savings we had, we used it. We did a lot of the work ourselves. My mother, my wife, my father-in-law, and myself. We did like the demo. We did the painting, built out the bar. And I am by no means a carpenter or anything, but YouTube goes a long way. So I was like looking at things and I was like, oh yeah, I could do that. I bought a little saw and I was doing things and we gutted the place and we designed it. The whole design is meant for you to feel like you're in our dining room at home, like, or a living room. It's a very cozy space and it does feel like you're in someone's home. So yeah, we were able to open in November 2023.
And how was reaction?
It was slow. It was very slow. There was some days that were like one table would come in. I'll never forget that night, actually. I sent everybody home. My wife was doing the front and I was in the back cooking and we got one table to walk in and we made $200 in sales that night. And I was like, man, did we do the right thing? Should I pick up a part-time job? All these things go through your mind, right? Because you're like, man, we just dumped our whole credit into this. There's a lot of money. And I was like, we just keep pushing, right? The first 6 months, I would come in and receive product and prep it myself. I had 3 cooks, but they would only come in to help me for service. Everything was done by me. Prep, marinades, breaking down butchery, all the pastas. And they would come in and they just like set up their station and help me with service because that's all I honestly could afford. That first month opening, we only had like 1 more month worth of funds.
So what happened? What saved it?
We were basically living week to week, right? Like, oh, we survived this month. Okay, we're able to still pay our employees and our vendors. And that's important to me, right? Like I'm making sure that everybody's paid. I could do without. I get a James Beard semifinalist nomination for 2024. From that moment, people started coming into this door and we're like, whoa, okay. So now we're rolling. I'm telling one of my cooks, hey man, I need you to come in on Tuesday with me to prep with me. And he's like, oh yeah, okay. For him, it's like, yes, hours. And then little by little, it started growing. I was like, okay, now I'm able to bring 2 people in with me. And I'm still doing the bulk of the stuff. And even now, I still do a lot. So now the ball's rolling. And then, we get to the finalist stage and I don't pass and business takes a dip. It doesn't take a drastic dip, but it took a little dip. And we're like, oh, okay. So now we're running like specials, steak nights and $5 glasses of wine with your steak, trying to bring people into the door, right? And then we get hit with a hurricane. Burrow comes and hits us with a hurricane and we're out of power for a week. We don't have a generator. So we lose everything, 100% loss. Luckily, there's insurance. They didn't give us much, but it was something. And we had to restart from scratch all over again. We do that. We kick back up. Boom, 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 boom. We're chugging along. We're getting by. Business is getting pretty good. And then Michelin comes a knocking in November last year. We get a Bib Gourmand,
which basically says this place is affordable and provides terrific food.
From that moment, we've been busy. Thank God, man. We've been steady, right? Steady.
And by the way, don't overlook the fact, and then you get nominated as Best Chef Texas again, and this time you get to the finals, and then you win. So
now we're about a month and a half out on reservations, maybe 2 months. It's a blessing, man.
If I get one of those elusive reservations, what kind of food am I going to find? What is it you're doing?
We're very chef driven. We're highly seasonal. There's things on our menu that change with the seasons. So for example, right now we're serving Texas peaches with like burrata and toast with like a shishito and pistachio relish kind of situation.
And what about that is Mexican?
Nothing. We're not a Mexican restaurant. We're a new American restaurant through the lens of a first generation Mexican American. We don't have chips and salsa, but there are Mexican dishes. You go to every restaurant here and they have enchiladas and tacos and they don't call themselves a Mexican restaurant,
I don't mean that in any negative way. I read article after article that describes you as a Mexican restaurant in some fashion.
They do. And I think that's just because I'm from Mexican descent, but we do have a mole on the menu and, we got a carne asada.
You're nixtamalizing corn to make your own tortillas. I mean, your mom makes the tortillas, right?
That is correct. Yeah, I make the masa for her and she comes and she makes the tortillas for us. She forms the empanadas for us. She's a big help, man. She was a big help in the original one too. She did the same thing and she actually ran the counter for the counter service. Now she helps with the tortillas and the empanadas, whatever masa thing we're doing. And then she goes and she helps by taking care of our kids while we're at work.
Let's spend some time on the menu. You're doing birria, which is like the hottest Mexican dish in America at the moment, but you're doing it with Wagyu?
Yeah.
Why?
Because honestly, I get a really good price on it. If I would get like an Angus choice, the Angus choice is probably only like 50, 60 cents cheaper. So why not get the better quality?
How the hell did you manage that?
You work with vendors and you tell them like, hey, I'm going to get this certain amount and we're going to do this. And, you just kind of work your deals out. Yeah. We're offering carne asada. That's also Wagyu too. Texas Wagyu from Rosewood Ranch. We got a Terrace Major, which is like a petite filet. And that's very much like a Korean marinated.
Which is also Wagyu.
Correct. And then our chicken is from Bell and Evans from Pennsylvania. It's like beautiful air chilled chickens, high quality. I'm making sure that all our quality is like very high end. And honestly, it all starts with the ingredients. It matters to me. I care, For example, we use Texas Gulf fish and it's fished out so often. It's super fresh. But then I'll get hiramasa from New Zealand and the company I use, it's literally like that fish is swimming 48 hours before I receive it. This beautiful fish, clear eyes and red gills, and it's a beautiful, pristine fish, and sashimi grade.
Well, it raises the question. The thing today is to say, I only use local stuff. Is local stuff always better, or is better stuff wherever you can find it?
2-part question. I try to use local as much as possible for the stuff that's actually really good that's local. And also for the sustainability, right? But for example, like I use a vendor called Farm to Table. Right now they're bringing in peaches from Lubbock, northern Texas, and like Fredericksburg, right? They deal with all these farms and they got like beautiful squash and beautiful peppers right now and all the stuff that grows really well here in Texas. So I make sure that that's on our menu. And then our beef program with the Rosewood Ranch. But then, there's beautiful fish from New Zealand. I need some of that. Like if there's stuff from California that is available that's not available here, then I get that. I want high quality product, and it doesn't always have to come from my backyard. It could come from everyone else, but the majority of stuff we do is local and sustainable. We that's what we try to aim to do. But uni, like for example, sea urchin, I get it from Santa Barbara or I get it from East Coast, from like Maine or Massachusetts.
What do you do with it?
I do two things. One, I make an emulsion out of it for our tuna tostada. And then we also serve it raw on top of our ceviche mixto, which is served with a watermelon aguachile, which we're using Texas watermelon. Because there's certain things here that grow really well. Watermelons grow really well here. Peaches, grapefruit, phenomenal grapefruit out here. Peppers.
What do you do with grapefruit?
Sometimes I brulee them. I'll make like a pink peppercorn and grapefruit situation. And mainly I get them to eat because they're very good.
Whoever wrote the Michelin listing seemed quite taken with your duck in a cherry mole. Tell me about that dish.
We actually have that on the menu right now because cherries are in season. This year, this iteration, I decided to go do half a duck with it. They're getting the breast and then they're getting the quarter leg that's braised in the mole. For our moles in the year here, we start in the spring with a strawberry mole. And then as soon as cherries are available, we go do a cherry mole. And once cherries are done, we'll go into figs. And then during the winter, we do a mole negro, which doesn't have any featured fruit. Our cherry mole, it's great, man. I use dried cherries and fresh black cherries. And then it's got like 28 ingredients.
Pardon my ignorance. Are cherries grown in Texas? Or are you bringing them in from like Michigan?
Actually, yes, which I just found out not too long ago because I ordered some from them. But like in the northern part of Texas, I guess closer to Oklahoma and stuff like that. I thought Oregon was like the authority on that, to be honest with you. And like they have the Rainier cherries and stuff, which I do get as well.
Are you using Texas cherries?
I am.
Wow.
I am. They're really good.
How do you feel about the state of the culinary industry in America? Prices are up. God knows the pandemic knocked a lot of independent restaurant owners out of the game. Are you feeling at all optimistic about the restaurant biz or concerned or both?
This industry is hard, whether there's pandemics or natural disasters. Paper thin margins. It is very extremely difficult. And I think it's always been that way. There's so many closures every day. It's concerning, but I feel like if you stay true to your product and you actually listen to your guests, if they have like valid concerns or wants, you listen to that. We're a neighborhood restaurant. I think what makes us unique as far as we're concerned is that there's really nothing like us in this area at all. And probably in like a 30-mile radius. This area is or it was kind of like a food desert, when it came to high quality, like chef driven meals. A lot of more places are opening up and people in this area are they flock to us because now they don't have to drive into the city to get a meal like ours. They're able to sit down here and enjoy a great glass of wine and get a good meal, get a good steak. I think a lot of people in the industry, I think one of their biggest mistakes is that they start too big. They start with like these big box restaurants. And once you can't fill those seats, you're looking for trouble.
Industry-wide, are things tougher than they've been? Do you have any hope for the future?
I hope it gets better. The restaurant industry takes the brunt of a lot of it, right? But we're also always there when there's a crisis, right? We're feeding people. Restaurants need to be here. I hope that one day that there's actual legislation that could help us, like how they help motor companies and airlines. Ultimately speaking, I think as long as you're serving good cuisine that's true to your heart, I think you'll always find a fan base and have people come into your door. Service is genuine and your food is genuine. I think, you'll be in a good spot. Fortunately, a lot of people do lose their businesses every day, money mismanagement or poor employee retention. These are all things that go hand in hand with a lot of companies, a lot of industries. And yes, I hope there is a brighter future. I think more and more people are trying to open their own businesses, specifically like in our area right here in Spring. Less chain restaurants are opening and I'm seeing more individual concepts, like different concepts that you don't see chains of. And that's a good sign for me.
Well, after some very worrying times, You seem to be on a roll, so congratulations, Chef.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a blessing. I don't take it for granted because as quick as it comes is as quick as it could go.
Let's assume it stays. How about that?
Yes.
Chef, thanks so much for taking the time to chat with me. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you, David. Thank you for having me on.
Thomas Bille on Culinary Characters Unlocked. I'm David Page, and I'll see you next time.